This is the Eerie Hour.
I got coffee. I don't want them to get out of my mic.
Do you think giants had coffee breath? Are you recording?
Yes.
Okay, good. I wish I hadn't asked if you were recording now.
Are we recording? Yes. Ah, fuck.
Do you think giant? What do you think a giant's breath smells like?
Rot.
Rot, because they're cannibals, right?
Yeah.
Rotten eggs
Something like that. Oh.
So
on a good day.
on a good day, yeah.
When the breeze is strong.
You never, as the old saying goes, you never want to be downhill from a giant. Not downhill. Sorry. Well, you don't want to be downhill from a giant either.
Right, because
The runoff. The runoff.
The boulders, yeah.
But
What's
you
that
don't want to be
noise?
downwind from a giant. Especially after chili night.
Yes.
Because it's human chili and the smell is just
yeah.
terrifying.
Delightful.
And that's the theme today. Welcome to the Eerie Theory Hour. I'm Guster Ding.
Someone just
Here
wafts
with
it
me
in and they're like, that was my wife.
Here with me today is our house historian, Marty Coins. How you doing today, Marty?
Good. Good morning, Gert and Gus. How
No,
are
there's
you?
no such thing as a good morning, you monster.
Yes, there is. With you fellas,
I'm
it's
here
always a
against
good
my
morning.
will.
Yeah.
We know.
Hey,
And speaking
Gus,
of that,
his hands are getting loose.
on the other side of the table, we have our local euthanasia enthusiast, Gert Burgelster.
Yeah, I see no reason to hate on when, just pull that last thread,
I'm sure we've all been there. And today we're going to be talking about giants.
Yeah.
Fee, fi, fo, fum.
That's a good fairy tale, I would say. Everybody knows that one, I hope. Jack and the Beanstalk. It's,
It's a nice call out, shout out to
Shout
Jack
out.
and the Jack and the Beanstalk.
how's that beanstalk, Jack?
Traded bean.
Jack and the
Traded a whole
Beanstalk.
cow for some beans. Lucked out. We all hate you, Jack. The medieval equivalent of winning the lottery.
Right?
Is that story anti-farming?
Because everything just is bigger and
Or
better.
is that about trade? What's that story really teach us?
I mean, it teaches you to become a home invader.
Yeah.
And,
especially people
especially
that
for rich
are
people?
big and
Yeah.
wealthy.
that's right.
Teaches
Rich
how to,
people must hear that story and be like, oh,
how to
a
hide.
little man.
It teaches you about stoves. That's important.
My golden goose. No. Oh dear.
Wasn't it like every time the he said, or you would say the goose, like the name of the goose, it would pop out a golden egg?
Yeah, that poor goose, right?
I mean, what pain it must be in.
just in constant torture. But Jack and the Beanstalk's not the only fairy tale that has to do with giant. Obviously, there's so many.
Oh yeah, I mean, they're all over the place. But some other ones, the Brothers Grimm had one. I think that was called The Valiant Little Tailor. Pretty fun story there. If you ever want to read that,
Can you give us a summary?
Yeah. Essentially, there's this tailor who crosses paths with a giant, and they sort of cross wits a little bit. And eventually, what happens is the tailor is invited to the giant's home to spend the night. Really, the giant wanted to eat it. Him, not it.
It is 2019.
It is, sure.
Let's not get speciest now.
That's right.
Speciest.
They ate and they, talked and they went to bed, and the giant said, sleep over here in this bed. The tailor was like, all right, it's a little bit big for me, but sure. So he, about midway through the night, he gets out and
So he was
goes,
a complainer.
yeah, indeed.
Well, it's a little big for me, but
Yeah, thanks. And he gets under the bed and he sleeps under there because it's better. It's more comfortable for him. And, shortly after, the giant gets up and whacks the bed and thinks he's dead. And then, in the morning, he pops out. They're like, "Ah, you're alive!" And they run off. A little tailor outwitted 2 giants. Gone. So
That's interesting. So why didn't the giants just use their larger stature and murder this man in cold blood?
They tried to, and they failed.
Oh, okay.
This story actually goes on to similar.
The reason that we're talking
circumstances.
about fairy tale giants today is because we're going to be also talking about the potential existence of real giants.
Yeah.
We're going to get into more detail as we go along.
So, where do we begin? I mean, let's talk about some of the
We can
the more traditional.
We know there's giants in traditional folklore from all over the world.
Right. It's in biblical context as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's also in.
Let's peel the God Band-Aid off real quick
Ouch.
and get to the religious context of giants.
The religious context of giants. I mean, I know they were in Genesis 6:4, I think.
I'm not too familiar with the Bible, but I hear verses. And they're lovely.
They're lovely. I know, like, Genesis 6:4 is one. Chronicles 20:6. It's also in the King James translation of the Bible.
And that's
There's the giant Goliath was known as 6 cubits in a span in height, which is over 9 feet tall, if you did the math. And that's in the Bible. It's pretty interesting. But then again, the Bible is a story, right?
Let's start at Genesis. How about that?
Let's start at Genesis.
Yeah.
All right. It reads as follows.
Because from what I understand, Genesis is the first book in the Bible.
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning. I believe it's the Nephilim that were in Genesis.
The Nephilim. Yes, the
Yeah.
descendants. All right. The
I think-
Nephilim were in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the Son of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. The same were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown. So that's the Nephilim in context of Genesis 6:4.
That also seems to be suggesting that their folk heroes at the time were these Nephilim.
Sure, and who knows? I mean, stories are usually depicted of heroes as being bigger than life, right? Stronger, always, heroic in nature. I mean, was this just a description of somebody that's like that, or was this in reference to an actual giant? I mean, I think later in the conversation we'll get into that a little bit more of skeletons found in different mounds in North America.
Right.
Yeah, because speaking of North America, it's interesting because it's not the Bible isn't the only place that giants are present in historical context.
Oh no, I mean, if you want to talk mythologies, they're all over the place. They're Native American. We'll probably touch base on that a little bit. There's definitely some stories there that the natives have passed down. Aztec mythology, Norse. I mean, you could type in giant and go to Wikipedia and find all this stuff about it. So what are giants? What do they look like?
Yep.
Big, right? When I say a giant,
What do you imagine when you see a
Yeah.
giant? Say a giant is what you're saying. Well,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, I play a lot of Magic, so
I think of a 7/7.
yeah, probably there's something that gets even bigger.
So, I mean, depictions of giants have. How tall do you think a giant would be?
Well, usually something over 7 feet.
Yep. Yeah.
I'd say over 7'10".
I mean, I went to school with a guy that was right. So, okay, that's more like it. Because I went to a school guy to school with a guy that was over 7 feet, and I can't ever remember looking at him and going, "Whoa, giant!"
Yeah. No. Right.
I mean, yeah, wow, you're tall, but
Yeah.
I mean, so let's actually skip that for a second. Let's go back to some of the giants that we know of in modern time.
Modern time, like currently living giants.
I don't know if anyone's living still. I think all of the tallest
most recent one I can
giants-
think of is Andre the Giant.
Yeah, me too.
He was like 7'2", I believe.
Yeah. Yep, that's about
7'2",
7'4" actually. It was 520
yeah.
pounds. Massive guy.
And
his heart just tried as hard as it could.
That's because he drank so much beer.
Oh yeah, was he a big drinker?
Huge.
Oh, yeah.
The guy could pound like just like
I think
sipping
he
a
drank-
teacup.
on a regular basis, I think, or on a good night, he could put away like at least 100 beers.
That's a lot of beers.
But it
Not
wasn't
For a man
him.
whose heart is trying so hard already.
And his body just kept growing, and
Right.
wrestling on top of that. Just
Wow.
But you have to think, like, if when we get into some of the other examples of giants in modern time, Andre was really the most active one out of the other two examples that I found, because a lot of them couldn't do anything because of the giganticism that they were
Yeah.
experiencing. It messed up their joints, it messed up their
all that
muscles.
extra weight. Just
That's right. We actually, I happen to know of a few that are the few of the people who are particularly tall. They usually don't live very long. Usually into their, I want to say, 50s or 60s.
Yeah, that's about it depends. I mean, I
Wasn't
guess
that
it all.
One guy, didn't he grow up to be at least 9? Didn't he grow to like almost 9 feet?
9 feet. I think. Are you talking about Robert Wadlow?
I think
Robert
so.
Wadlow is 8'11", very
Yeah,
nearly 9 feet
so-
tall,
Yeah.
Yeah, he was also known as the Alton Giant and the Giant of Illinois.
and he only lived till
Like 30 something.
32 years old. It looks like, if my math is correct.
That's not very old for those
no.
wondering. I'm
No,
33.
I'm 31, so imagine being so tall that next year,
Was your last
yeah,
year.
So, that's, so clearly the modern giants in the times that we've seen, they're not
they're like
not like the old ones. They're just
No.
it's clearly
kinda-
not the same thing
no.
as what they're talking about in these stories.
Right, and some of the ones that are mentioned are big and strong, and the women are just as strong. And I mean, like these
Andre
could
was
unroot.
Pretty strong. Like
That's why I was
he
saying it's interesting to note that
been
he
able
was
to,
really
like,
the
tips
only.
cars over. and-
Yeah, he was the only active giant because
think
Robert
there's this-
Wadlow couldn't do any laborious activities. He had to wear knee braces. I mean, so there's
I wonder how it differs because I think some giantism like doesn't affect you as much as others.
Right.
It seems.
But these seem like almost like a similar condition to dwarfism, except for in like the opposite. It doesn't seem like a thing from
yeah a lot
genetics
of it,
so much as it is a mutation or such
it's
as
actually
it is
a lot of
I guess dwarfism is. I'm not really educated enough on it to talk about it, but
No, I did all my research on giantism for this podcast. So
it's actually caused by a tumor on the pituitary gland.
I see.
And I guess it causes like pressure on it, and it affects the growth. So
Okay, yeah,
that's
so it's completely different.
Or you can
Yeah.
just have an overactive pituitary gland too.
possibly, yeah.
And I think you can opt to get surgery to remove that, and it usually helps. I know right now a modern giant, I guess, that comes to mind is the Big Show from WWE.
Sure.
I mean, he's 7 feet tall, 500 pounds, but he had giantism, but he had the pituitary gland removed to stop the growth,
That's interesting.
and he seems really healthy right now.
So I'm wondering if
He's like over 50. He's like showing abs on
That's crazy.
Instagram.
how tall is he?
It's like 7 feet.
How much does he weigh?
He used to weigh 500 pounds, like in his youth.
Can he throw
But-
boulders?
Probably. He's pretty strong.
Depends on how heavy the boulder was. I
Yeah.
imagine there's
A limit.
an upper limit, yeah.
So
Potentially even a size limit on the lower side.
right.
Can't
right.
quite close your fist around it.
Big Show heights. Yeah, he's 7 feet tall.
That's crazy. That's it's pretty tall.
But that's pretty average. Not average, but
Yeah, no. I mean, if you look at Andre the Giant, by the age
As
of
far as
12, he
wrestling
was
go,
6'3".
as far as like wrestling goes, there's 7-footers like all over the fucking place.
Sure.
Oh, sorry.
So and that's just talking about giants, like what we see as giants in modern day compared to what we're talking about here, which is it seems like an actual whole other race of man, a whole other civilization
before what we really
Maybe
knew.
Right, that
subspecies of man, like another's.
Possible. Yeah.
Right, and like an alternate evolutionary course of
Right.
man that ultimately ended up dying out.
Or became
Except
Sasquatch.
for perhaps leaving, or became Sasquatch. Yes, it's entirely possible. I mean, then again, anything with Sasquatch is entirely possible.
The one thing I picked up from this was Sasquatch throws rocks, giants throw rocks.
I mean, it's pretty
Problem
important
solved.
distinction. It's a pretty important,
So does that
collation
mean
of
we
data.
kind of do know the mating call of a giant? You ever seen those Finding Bigfoot people? They go out in the woods. We're gonna start doing the mating call of a Sasquatch.
I mean-
it's just a bunch of weirdos in the woods going.
I heard something.
I don't know. I
rock
don't know
just
the
hit me.
exact noise, but it was freaky. And I could just imagine the locals around town just like out there enjoying their campfire in the summer. And all of a sudden they just hear like.
Oh, it's the one to go. It's the one to go.
Or imagine these folks are out there. Imagine these Bigfoot hunters are out there, and they make their Bigfoot call, and then one actually responds.
Yeah.
Like just comes flying out of the woods
with
and,
a hard Sasquatch dick.
That's right.
It flops. It just freeze, and it's awkward for both of you.
I was not
You can
expecting
see
this.
the intelligence and shame in his eyes.
On the next episode of Catfish, these Bigfoot. That's the crossover I'm looking for.
Finding Bigfoot and catfish.
Yes. Turns out it's just a hairy guy.
I mean, catfished in really any hunting show where they use mating calls to lure in.
Do you think furries go Sasquatch hunting?
I mean,
One will never
yes.
question that.
I do.
no? Yes.
We are very much amateur podcasters, if we can call ourselves that. Right now, we're just 3 guys on a microphone. So. Well, 3 guys on 3 separate microphones. We aren't sharing one microphone. That would be weird. And now I'm making it weirder.
It is 2019.
All right.
All right.
So let's hop back on this.
Yeah.
All right, so
All right. Can
so
we
that's
just
what
have
we're
20
talking about today. We're talking about giants all through history. How about what about giants in Greek mythology?
I thought you were going to pull out some random country. Like, what about
I was looking at all these, and I'm just like, maybe I shouldn't go with Basque
What about
mythology first.
Can you tell us
Being
about
a country I've never heard the name of before today.
Yeah, Greek mythology. I believe they were known as the Gigantes. Try saying that in Greek. I'm not going to.
Gigantes? That might not be right.
They were the children of Uranus and Gaia.
Oh, okay. So here's the pronunciation in Greek. Nope, can't pronounce that.
It's like Yuvia.
Where is it?
It's
that in the-
It's
under
it's
Greek
under
mythology.
Greek mythology here.
You know, bullet
Basque.
point 1.6.
Where is it? Nope.
And that's it's not just the Greek people or the Romans with the Bible or Native Americans, or this seems to be a phenomenon that's spread all across the world. It's
A lot of
whether it's people who maybe heard stories.
Yeah, I think. I mean,
think it's more
my
like-
research mainly stemmed in what I know of in North America, but there are a lot of cultures out there that the stories of giants, whether you want to call them the Nephilim or Ettins or whatever, there's tons of different names out there for them. They all have similarities in the stories, you know. A lot of them were cannibalistic. They were tall. They were strong. You know, they were exceptional builders and miners. I mean, a lot of these stories all link up with one another, and it's interesting.
Were you able to find any information on their? You said they're excellent builders. Was there any evidence of their existence before?
Other than the fact that they're known as the great mound builders, they have been linked to building some of the more ancient civilizations like Teotihuacan.
I see.
With all the extraordinarily smooth cut stones that fit perfectly with one another. There's some stories tied around that. So whether it's true or not, who knows? It's interesting to note that they were linked to building ancient sites.
Yeah, and when you think back on the feats that ancient civilizations were able to achieve,
Sure.
it seems like it makes sense that not to discount the fact that a lot of those civilizations were built on the backs of slave labor.
Oh,
But,
yeah, no, yeah.
But it seems like certainly some oddities seem more possible
Sure.
when you think about the fact that they may have had some ancient group of huge men
Sure.
and women who were able to help move some of these large, like the Easter Island heads, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that.
I mean, they
but
could carry
those
things.
those were, I guess, those could be sculpted right out of
stone.
stones that were
But
already
they're
in
not.
place.
They're completely surrounded by like dirt.
Oh, so they were clearly moved.
Yeah.
I think those stones, like that kind of stone, isn't found on that island either.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think that's the mystery of it. I haven't brushed up on my.
Well, I
Easter
mean,
Island
there's a lot of
story,
symbolism
and-
too, in like in the statues themselves and how they're erected and how they look. And I think there's even ties to like the way they're facing has importance to how it ties to the island.
Aren't they like staring toward like I think people did longitudes and latitudes and like I think they line up looking at some kind of pyramid or other human
Something
structure.
like that.
I mean that could
That's
just be coincidence.
crazy because I mean,
Yeah.
one little inch to the right, 100 like miles away is like 5 miles. It's
Yeah.
like it's hard to say if that's even true. That's interesting though.
So how far back do we have giants? Do we understand that these giants existed?
So
Or what evidence do we have?
things that we've uncovered in the Paleo-Indian culture, there was a skeleton that was found to date it that was dated around 9000 BC. And if you think about that, that's like what, 2000 years after the Ice Age, I think. The Ice Age was in 11,000 BC or 12,000 BC, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that sounds about right.
So, I mean, we're talking right out of the Ice Age.
Right out of the Ice Age, perhaps even existing alongside
Depends, yeah, it's possible.
the great woolly mammoth.
Indeed. Maybe they were riding the woolly mammoths.
It's possible.
I mean, come on.
Have you seen? All right, not to get off topic, but speaking of mammoths.
Oh, please do.
Yes.
If you don't mind, let me derail this
All right.
conversation.
I'm
Have you
holding.
seen Primal on Adult Swim?
No.
I forgot the director, but he did Samurai Jack.
Okay. I have seen that.
No dialogue. It's all sound effects and animation.
That's crazy.
It's amazing storytelling.
That's-
Oh, you get grunts. You get grunts and dinosaurs roaring. As far as voice acting goes.
That's awesome.
So that's when can we catch that show?
It was on, like, they had an event on Adult Swim. It was 5 nights, 5 episodes. Like, it was like a mini series
Oh
thing.
wow.
And it was beautiful. Like, the end, like, had me feeling dead inside, like just because I was so heartbroken.
Well, I'm not
Oh,
watching
so there,
that
there
show.
you have it. Check out Primal.
That is
From
like a
Adult Swim if you
serious
get a
like
chance.
that means I loved it. It was so good because I was so emotionally
were
attached
attached to
to
it, yeah.
cartoon characters
That weren't talking.
that weren't talking. Dialogue is not needed in
That's
a good story.
Sounds like some brilliant storytelling.
It was amazing. Oh,
I'll have to look at it. It sounds
yeah.
good.
I think it might be on Hulu. I'm not sure, but
I will find it.
And we talked
But-
about Andre the Giant and
Yes.
Robert Wadlow a little bit earlier. And I
Yeah,
thought this
we
said
did.
John. I thought this said Joe Rogan, for a
yeah.
second.
As
And
soon
I
as
was
I saw that name, I was like, "Oh my God,
we're not
no!"
looking up egos.
John
Sick
Rogan,
bird.
who was
Sorry,
born in
I'm a fan.
Hendersonville, Tennessee, in the late 1800s.
Yep. He was the son of a farmer slave. He was the fourth of 12 children. I mean, if you're having 12 children, there's probably one anomaly along the way. He grew very rapidly at the age of 13, leading to ankylosis, which is an abnormal rigidity of the skeletal joints. He couldn't walk or stand by 1882. Again, another
Short life.
not even really short life, but problems with walking, standing, being able to do any physical anything.
So again, we can reiterate that gigantism, as we've seen in recent times, doesn't appear to be much related to what we're talking about in the
Correct.
with amazing builders, very strong, agile,
Yeah, it seems like
tall people.
giants in the folklore were built to be these, at least sustainable.
Right, where
Absolute-
this doesn't appear to be a continuation of them in
Yeah.
modern times.
It seems like they were a separate species of
Yeah,
humanoid-like figures.
yeah. I'm thinking the same thing. I mean,
So,
who knows though?
Is it cannibalism?
That's true. That's a good point. If we are effectively
Let's talk about the
different
anatomy.
beings-
What differs us from these giants and our anatomy? I think some fossil records state that they had double rows of teeth, sometimes extra fingers and toes,
Yep. Some were
pointy heads. I think the Nephilim are described as having pointier heads.
They are.
So kind of slender, almost like a gray alien.
But if you look at a lot of
Was
cultures,
it aliens?
Whoa,
I don't
whoa.
know.
Aliens is next month.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
little sneak peek into aliens.
So
Specifically UFOs.
yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
But-
So there were
Speaking
some
of Uranus.
with-
Sorry.
the Giants were definitely taller than
I'm gonna
us.
press the button.
Please don't press the button.
No,
I'm
the
gonna
I'm
button's
already
getting
tied
pushed.
up against
I'm
my
gonna
will
press
here. I'm making the best of it.
What did I tell you about telling people that you're tied up against your will?
They'll think it's a joke. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's just a joke. see?
Hey. Anyway,
Oh no, not the.
Rex slide.
Sorry.
So, Gert, you mentioned that the long-headed,
Yeah.
you know.
Who's to say those
Rumor.
are the Nephilim, though? You
No,
know?
it's not even that, but we know that
But
other
they're-
civilizations have done that, right?
Yeah.
When you're born, they actually wrap the head, and it makes it more
Yeah, they put the,
elongated
like, the
because they
gold-
feel like it
Or not golden if you're
you know,
lucky. It's
makes them
probably
more
gold.
connected or spiritually attuned to the
Yeah.
creators. I don't know. That's just shit I've read.
So and then there's been news articles all through American history too, relating these giants. In particular, the thing that stuck out to me the most was Abraham Lincoln. We'll get to him in a moment. Let's talk about the conquistadors in South America.
We know that the Spanish traveled over. A lot of them made contact more in the Caribbean, in Florida, down in the southern parts, and obviously in Mexico or South America now. A lot of them were rumored to have stories and diaries of different captains and crew members encountering giants. So, as far as an example, I know that Magellan and his team reported under John Cabot's map that They reached destination in the bottom of South America, and his crew encountered the Patagonian giants. Even Sir Francis Drake went the same route, and after he got into a massive storm and found the Patagonian giants.
Yep.
So.
And like I mentioned, Abraham Lincoln. I understand that Abraham Lincoln mentioned giants in one of his speeches, or maybe.
I think it was like notes either before or after their speech. But the quote that is described as the eyes of the species of extinct giants whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as ours do now. He said that in Niagara Falls in 1848, or maybe didn't say it, but it was notated somewhere.
I like how you say he said something along the lines of, and then you quote it verbatim.
Right. Making sure
Again, new to the podcast thing.
Yeah, we got
new
this.
to the podcast thing.
So,
I don't know much about it, but then you say.
but here it is. Yeah. That's funny.
So anyway, so that's a little bit on the history of giants, starting in ancient times and moving up through, up to getting into American history, and we're going to continue with American history when we come back. But we left off talking a little bit about Abraham Lincoln,
Who also, speaking of New York, there's New York Giants.
Wow, wow, wow. Hike.
Yeah.
They throw.
I think we're
boulders.
all
You're good at
uncomfortable
throwing-
now.
They throw
I should get the button.
footballs.
Press the button.
I thought your hands were tied.
I don't know why you're so worried when I press that button. You say, "Oh yeah," every time I press it.
That's just how I
You're
express
sadistic.
pain. Are you telling me how to feel pain now?
Maybe.
First you tie me up, and then you hit me a few times. Yeah. And then you shock me with a button, and you tell me how to feel.
You've got a point. I'm not.
You
So-
may control me physically, but you cannot control my emotions. I will not let you.
Excuse me.
Anyway,
So the
Did you get it all out? Are you
I
done?
think so.
so I understand
Sorry, I
that
got the giggles. I have to just roll with it. Sorry.
that even the Smithsonian has some information about giants. Kind of interesting to see that the Smithsonian, one of the more respected historical societies in the United States, has documentation about this kind of thing.
They are very interesting, in fact. The main purpose of the Smithsonian's creation, their motto jet. Their motto is for the increase and diffusion of knowledge, which is interesting if you think about that. And I know, Gus, you have an interesting explanation for how diffusion is and how it works.
Oh, diffusion?
Yeah, of knowledge.
Well, I mean it's effectively just when knowledge is like gathered into one place. It's just a better chance that it's going to find its way out into the world.
Well, I think you
I'm
mentioned.
serious about that. Go ahead and.
I think you mentioned how in history information goes to the victors of.
Oh yes,
The
yes.
culture.
Yep. Okay.
So some ideas of culture might be lost throughout the ages.
and also, which I
because-
meant to
because
mention
it
earlier,
you're going to
goes-
tell
it's
your
handed
side of
down.
the story,
It's-
obviously.
right.
That, and it's also handed down through time, and therefore the diffusion of knowledge could be
Right.
diffused through time.
And what I think what he's getting at is I was talking about the tales of giants that were told. Nobody seems to in these stories have ever directly met the giants. It was more just a story they'd heard from somebody they'd heard a story from. And when you see, let's take David and Goliath for example. When somebody was recounting what they saw in the incident of David versus Goliath, they might have seen a 7'5", hugely like brawny man come out of the army, and a small man from the other army come out, and those two fought, and the story got inflated with time. It got now Goliath is instead 9 feet tall, and David is only 4'5".
That's how you become a legend.
Yes, and that's just through storytellers embellishing their stories to make them more exciting.
Sure.
That happens even
Legend
now.
has it.
Yeah.
He was 10.
take a comic
He was
book,
the
right?
size of a house, and he was the size of a mouse.
Or even take a look at the movies that we see that are based on true events.
Sure.
Oftentimes the story is conflated to make it more exciting than it
Indeed.
actually was.
I agree with that, yeah.
So,
Like,
and I
I
think
watched,
that's possible throughout
I
human
watched
history.
Rocket Man, and I don't think he did a lot of that stuff in the movie
Sure.
because it was a musical, and suddenly things are on fire, and he's dancing, and
I watched Bohemian Rhapsody.
but you never know because he lived a pretty rock star lifestyle. So
Sure. How was it?
That
Gus?
was Bohemian Rhapsody.
yeah,
Uh,
I saw it too. I just wanted
I knew how it was going to end.
No.
spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
I'm
It's pretty accurate.
so I've heard.
It's a good movie though. I liked it.
Yeah, it was
I
enjoyable.
got a little teary during the what is it, Band-Aid?
No, Live Aid.
Live Aid.
Live Aid. It did end up trying to be a
Band-Aid was the
Band-Aid
thing.
solution to the
Yeah.
problem, which really just made things much worse. But let's, it was a show of people trying to be nice to each other.
Speaking of giants, I think this works because it's like, superstar giants.
Superstar
Giants in rock and roll.
Yeah.
That was like I love that part of the movie though, that the last part where he's going through the performance on Live Aid. It really hit me.
So,
Seeing all those
we
people
were
sing along to your songs, like
Oh
that
yeah,
has
it's just a lot of power in it, right?
Ah,
Sure.
So
There's
hit me
energy.
in the feels.
Yeah.
the
Sorry.
So the Smithsonian. Am I reading this right? They have evidence of skeletons that they found.
Not just evidence of skeletons that they've found. There's a lot of people who have dug up varying mounds, which are attributed to giant skeletons being found. A lot of these actually get shipped to the Smithsonian's, or the Smithsonian's become involved in some way, shape, or form, and they are generally missing, or no one knows where they're at. Smithsonians have been asked. They claim they don't know.
And I also understand that the question's often asked, like, what does the government have to hide for this kind of thing?
That's a
But
good question. I mean,
It's just like,
I don't know.
if this is something that is being guised by somebody, who is guising it and why? Like,
right. I mean, if you go back to the Smithsonian's first policy that they indoctrined in 1879, it was on the limitations of the use of some anthropologic data, and that was their policy for the next 100 years.
what do you know about that? Do you know anything more about that, or?
It was actually a report that Major John Wesley Powell wrote. I believe he was the person that wrote the policy for the whole thing. But essentially, they equate any older cultures before like natives as being essentially like childish and not intelligent enough to be able to
Savages.
Right, exactly. They made them really small in nature, and they kind of wrote them off as being anything that wouldn't benefit us moving forward.
Oh, I see. So
Does that make sense?
out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah,
out of
I mean,
existence.
there's tons of cave paintings that I know that they found in like Central America that really begged the question, why don't we look at these things and see what these cultures were about?
Right, because and from what I keep saying, from what I understand, I'm doing the same thing you did last time. So there's also been some skeleton discoveries in America. We found, despite the Smithsonian's efforts to hide this from us, make them sound like an evil organization like that. Despite that policy that we just discussed,
We have skeletons in our closet.
there's been some discoveries that haven't gone completely under the radar.
It doesn't feel like they're trying to hide it.
Tons.
They're just like not acknowledging it.
Right.
Like it's not. It's above us. Or
Same,
we're
just
above
like
that.
with Bigfoot.
Boom.
Gonna find you.
Back to skeletons.
This is a shout out to Bigfoot. We're gonna get you.
Hey,
If you're listening,
where
right
in
now,
the
we're
world
gonna
is
find
Bigfoot?
you.
We're coming to get you.
Oh, stay tuned. We're gonna have a Finding Bigfoot episode.
Yes.
We're gonna go out in the woods
Yeah.
and we're gonna find him, and we're gonna make him answer for all of his.
And UFOs. We're basically
Hiding.
covering the entire
Where are you hiding from?
weekday evening lineup of the History Channel. So
we're up next, boys.
with some of the things that we want to talk about a lot here are mysterious things from the past and from the present.
I
Eerie
mean,
things, I might dare say.
Eerie, indeed. And then we'll discuss those.
Yeah.
We'll
Back-
theorize.
Back to
what about-
archaeological finds.
Yeah. What about New North Wisconsin? What did they find in 1908?
In 1908, apparently they discovered giants of enormous size that once inhabited this country years ago. Was proven last Sunday. This is in an article. It's the interesting discovery was made by George Patton and L.H. Eaton, two Chicago tourists who were spending the summer there. It kind of goes on to discussing how they excavated.
This is a news article from the from July 23rd, 1908.
Yes, from the New North Wisconsin paper.
I see.
So,
So-
the Sunday before July 23rd, 1908.
Yes, I believe that's
Okay.
what it's saying.
I was like, what
Correct.
Sunday?
I was like, yeah, just this last Sunday, like
We're just getting around to
6
this?
days ago. Like,
Slash.
dang, that's cool. They find this
I've
stuff now.
linked past and future.
Yeah,
So
Breaking news, everyone.
they discovered a skeleton that was nearly 8 feet in height, and the arms extended several inches below the hips. But there's been a numerous amount of things that have been discovered other than skeletons with with these discoveries. There's different forms of like pottery. There's like copper. Some of these
There's
skeletons.
tools
there's
to match
tools.
the scale of these
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
wow, and these are found in the burial mounds. is
Some of
what
them
you're
have
talking
been. Yeah.
about?
Yep.
Gigantic man buried next to ferocious panther. The Cincinnati Commercial Gazette on September 26, 1889 said soon after the first March relics were collected to be placed on loan to the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C.
Interesting.
During the last 2 months, 11 mounds have been opened and their contents taken to the museum and placed on exhibition. What did they find in this particular mound?
What they found in these mounds, they varied in height from 8 to 30 feet, and I guess they were generally conical in shape. There was about 10,000 square yards of dirt that they excavated from this. They understood that it was built by the Aborigines that lived hundreds of years ago. I do know that they found several skeletons of large individuals. In the panther that was next to it was just as large, and they don't know if the panther had killed it or if it was more of a sacrificial type.
Huh.
So I believe that
Maybe it
skeleton
was his pet.
was about 8 or 9 feet in height.
Ooh, you're good kitty.
No.
I mean,
Giant kitty.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Continue. I was purring.
Oh, I thought you were sighing. I was like, or you were snoring while you're awake. I was like, oh, sorry.
You suffer from narcolepsy.
But I mean, people think that like if we were smaller than house cats, they wouldn't be our pets.
No, they would just
They would-
devour
Oh no,
us.
they would definitely kill us.
because
Oh,
of our size.
absolutely.
So, like,
We would
with
have
a
like
giant-
wars with their kind.
Yeah.
Like it would be us versus house cats. Like I could hear their meows from miles away.
I mean, panthers are pretty big cats.
You
but
know what
they're
else
not
would eat
the
us
biggest
if we were
cats.
smaller
No,
than
they're
it?
not the biggest pet.
Compared to a
cats,
giant, like that'd just be a really big.
snack.
Let's just say the world would be a terrifying place for us if we were much smaller, because then we've got birds of prey to worry about.
Oh, God,
those
no.
already pick children.
What a
up.
cool way to die, though.
This metal.
Oh, the ground! Where did the ground go?
Gert was one.
It's picking up.
Now
my eggs.
2. Yeah.
I can see my poop.
Oh, I think I'm gonna be sick. Nope, that's blood.
I'd vomit, but my stomach acid has already left my belly. It's out.
Excuse me, bird.
This is awesome.
Could you send me down? This hurts.
Excuse me, bird. Could you kindly pluck my heart out of my chest? That'd be great.
What a great way to start an adventure, though, for like a little person. Like, you get dragged up into this bird's nest, you get to fight them off with a stick. Anyway, you gotta find your way back home to your village.
You gotta find out how to
I
get down.
assume-
Do you think we'd have advanced as far if we had the same capacity for mind, but we were that small?
Probably more because of our need to build tools would probably.
Like we'd be able to
Strengthen.
use fewer materials. That's actually interesting. Honestly,
There is that movie
I think
about,
microbial life from
yeah.
aliens is probably more likely than human-sized life because it takes up fewer resources and has more time to develop before it has to leave
But-
its planet.
I think that would just cause us to breed faster too. We'd
keep
breed
going.
faster too, and we'll use up more resources. We're doomed. It's inevitable.
Yep.
Yeah,
Human nature will doom
You
us.
heard it here first, folks. Humans are done for.
There's that movie about.
so what about
shrinking
this?
d-
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's this movie about like for rich people or people that just want to get away from society or something. I don't remember the plot, but I just remember like they'd shrink you down.
Oh
Matt
yeah, with Matt
Damon was-
Damon. Yeah,
Matt Damon.
yeah.
Sorry, every time his name comes up, I have to quote the Team America Matt Damon because it's just really funny. It's funny.
It is funny.
hysterical.
It's hilarious.
Matt Damon.
Because when you see Matt Damon's face but don't hear him talk, you expect that. You would expect that that's
I don't know why that works so well,
what
but
he
it
would
does.
sound like. So,
Oh, man.
so how about this huge skeleton found in Florida? The Advertiser Monday. The Advertiser Monday, the 18th of May. This says 2915, but I'm guessing it's 1915.
Yes. That's a typo.
Yeah,
Or is it?
predicting the future now.
A giant found in the future.
So, they discovered a skull that was 1/4 larger than that of a normal modern skeleton. And if you notice that some of these articles in this piece, in this outline, actually talk about people that discovered these skeletons were actually able to put their head inside of them.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Some of them, not all of them, because there's a wide range of sizes that have been found. But just interesting to note that that's 1/4 larger than the modern normal skeletons. It's how big is 1/4 larger?
And they're pulling these things out of the water too, like in this New York Times article, where a fisherman found a skeleton,
Yeah.
8 feet long, embedded in the sand.
Yep. In Florida, probably down where the swamps are and the wetlands. But it discusses a skeleton that was 8 feet long, and as you said, it was embedded in the sand of an uninhabited island off the southern tip of Florida mainland. And it was brought to the this article or this paper in the New York Times by 3 fishermen that found it, and that's where the report came from. But
That was in 1936.
yeah, and it was reported to the New York Times back then.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these burials, though, I mean, there's maps. There's a reporter who her name was Cecilia Hall, and she worked with a couple guys that did the history show In Search of Giants, and some of their research and their time spent trying to figure out more of this story. They created a Google Earth map that actually kind of shows, what's been found, discovered, reported, and what different types of things were being found.
And I'm looking at this map right now. It's very impressive. These locations that they found evidence of.
Yep.
Of the giants, and these are
but not
very
just
concentrated, pretty much along a lot of the areas that we
Kind
are
of.
concentrated ourselves.
Yeah, and that's an interesting story.
Almost
there,
like
too.
and the only area that doesn't appear to be covered in giants is along the mountains and into the desert,
Right.
which just may be such harsh territory. We haven't spent a lot of time looking there, maybe.
Sure. Yeah. It's possible.
Or just not a common place that they would have existed. It's very interesting to look at. Well, anyway, thank you everybody for turning into the Eerie Theory Hour.
Where shit's always
tuning
spooky.
into the Eerie Theory Hour. I'm sure some people turned in while watching it
and
listening
tuned out.
to it, but we appreciate you watching. And do you have any closing statements, Marty Coins?
Next month's episode will be just as eerie.
Oh yeah, what are we talking about, Marty? What do you think?
Our next episode, I think we're gonna tell UFO stories, UFO sightings.
Do some
We
research
have
into that.
some of us at the table have some personal encounters, which I found very interesting.
Indeed.
We may have some interviews.
So there you have it. Next month we'll be talking to crazy people about their hallucinations.
Yeah. You saw something in the sky, you didn't know what it was. That's a UFO.
Yeah, 100%.
Unidentified. All that matters is it was unidentified,
Falling
and it was falling with style.
I mean, flying.
Flying, right? Yeah, something.
Flying.
So
falling.
anything you want to say to the good people out there, Gert Burglester, before we call it quits for the night?
I just want to say, let me out of here! I don't want to be here!
Cut the feed! Cut the feed!
No.